I don't care if my club wins the comp or if my country wins the World Cup, as long as my state wins Origin. That's how deep this rivalry runs. For Queenslanders and New South Welshmen, State of Origin isn't just the biggest event in Rugby League, it's the only one that really matters. It turns teammates into enemies, splits families down the middle, and turns 3 nights a year into an all-out war. So why do we care so much about State of Origin? Why does Origin carry more weight than any other game? And how did a simple interstate clash go from being dead to the most intense rivalry in Australian sports? And for the sake of explaining how deep Origin goes, this will be the first video on the channel that has its own chapters, so we can explain the story as simple as possible as we go through the eras. This is the story of how State of Origin changed Rugby League forever, and why 4 decades later it still hits harder than anything else in the game. Welcome to Harbour NRL, let's kick off. Chapter 1. From unfair to unforgettable. To appreciate what State of Origin is, we've got to know where it came from. And back in the 1970s, interstate rugby league was pretty unfair. Players were chosen based off which state they played club footy in, not where they came from. It sounds pretty harmless until you realise Queensland's best players kept moving to Sydney for better competition and play. They'd switch states, don a blue jersey, and then pummel Queensland on the field year after year. And for 21 straight years, Queensland couldn't win an interstate series. As QRL historian Greg Shannon put it, as a kid growing up in the 1970s, it used to drive you nuts. We had good players, but we'd lose them and then they'd come back in a blue jersey. It was awful. We didn't win a series for 21 years. The rivalry was always there, but it was one-sided. Queenslanders felt robbed and New South Welshmen understandably enjoyed the dominance. But by 1980, something had to change and the idea was proposed to let players represent the state they first played in, essentially where they felt at home, and we'll call it State of Origin. Many in Sydney scoffed at the concept, but Queensland was all in. This was more than a new rule, it was a chance for redemption. And on the 8th of July 1980, the first official State of Origin match kicked off in Brisbane. And history stepped onto the field wearing a maroon jersey. That man was Arthur Beetson, a Queensland legend at 35 years old, lacing up for his home state for the first time. But more importantly, Beetson set the tone for the intensity and 80-minute hatred we see today, landing a punch on Parramatta teammate Mick Cronin, who dared to wear New South Wales blue that night just to make a point. This was Origin, mate against mate, and to top it all off, Queensland won. Against all odds and predictions, the Maroons cleaned house, winning 20-10 over the Blues. For Queensland, it was more than just a win, it felt like a long time wrong had finally been corrected. With Greg Shannon quoted as saying, "When Origin started, it was wonderful. There was a sense of justice," speaking for every Queensland fan who finally saw their heroes return in maroon. A young Mal Meninga, who scored points that night on his 20th birthday, later reflected on Beetson's impact. He described Arthur in the dressing room as the epitome of a person going into battle, and Queensland had won that battle. Meninga went on further to say that game was a catalyst. From that game onwards, it's always been a battle between the two states, and the interstate clash was reborn. No longer a formality, but a full-blown war with a footy. That one night in 1980 ignited something almost mythic. The next year they did it again, and by 1982, Origin was established as a best-of-3 series, and Rugby League had its new crown jewel. Fans flocked, TV ratings exploded, and the quality of play naturally went through the roof. Even star players admitted these Origin games were a noticeable step up from regular matches, and suddenly state pride mattered as much as club loyalty. Queensland and New South Wales had always been Rugby League heartlands, but Origin tapped into a deeper tribalism. It gave Queenslanders a sense of pride they'd been craving and gave New South Wales a new fight to relish. In short, it changed Rugby League forever, turning a struggling concept into an annual spectacle nobody wanted to miss. Chapter 2. The real war begins. If the early 80s lit the flame, the late 80s poured gasoline on it. State of Origin quickly became known for its savageness and passion. These weren't just exhibition games, they were fights for state honor. In the most literal sense. fights. Each year brought new tales of heroism and hatred. Queensland had found its swagger, and a fearless leader in Wally Lewis, a cocky, brilliant playmaker, seemed to always save his best for the Origin stage. They called him the king in Queensland, and Wally's dominance through the 80s turned him into the face of Origin. Under his leadership, Queensland won series after series, and the rivalry's intensity reached new heights, with New South Wales sick of being second best, determined to strike back. You could feel the pride and animosity building on both sides. As Steve Mortimer, the Blues captain in 1985, said, "I'm very proud to be a New South Welshman, just as proud as any Queenslander is for their state." And by the mid-80s, Origin pride was coursing through blue veins just as much as maroon ones. And one photograph says it all. In the pouring rain of 1991, Wally Lewis and New South Wales Mark Geyer stood nose to nose, snarling at each other while referee David Manson and Blues hooker Ben Elias looked on in disbelief. That freeze frame, two giants refusing to back down, defines Origin's fury. It came after an all-in brawl just before halftime, when Guyer's flying elbow sparked mayhem before the infamous face-off. The ref wedged himself between them repeatedly as they traded verbals all the way to the tunnel. It was the very definition of iconic footage. And this kind of drama wasn't a one-off. It was becoming tradition. Huge hits, fights, and constantly pushing the limits. Whatever it took to win for your state. As one commentator remarked back then, "We've got some players really sorting out their grievances," capturing the mix of humor and awe these showdowns had. Origin had turned into an all-out physical and psychological battle, and fans absolutely ate it up. But it wasn't just biffs. The Origin arena produced unbelievable skill and drama that left fans and players shaking their head. Let's take 1994 as an example. Queensland needed a miracle in the dying seconds at the SFS. What followed is simply known as the miracle try. The Maroons flung the ball through almost every pair of hands, 6, 7, 8 passes, until winger Mark Coyne dived over in the corner to steal a win, with Rab's legendary voice cracking as he yelled,
"That's not a try, that's a miracle!"
Moments like that became Origin lore, retold in pubs for decades. But New South Wales had their own magic. In 1985, after finally winning their first series, Blues captain Steve Mortimer was so overcome, he dropped to his knees and kissed the SCG turf in front of 40,000 fans. He'd later recall how that 1985 victory felt like lifting a curse. We finally got that morale Queensland have had since 1980. The win bringing him to literal tears of joy. Origin made the toughest men we produced actually cry, and neither side wanted to give an inch. But by the 90s, State of Origin had already become more than an annual sporting event. It was an annual grudge match that had captured the imagination of Australia. Even people who didn't follow rugby league would tune in, because the spectacle was unmissable. It was raw, unpredictable, and utterly compelling. As one writer put it, other sports rivalries pale in comparison when placed next to the magic that is State of Origin. The tribalism was so strong that Queenslanders started embracing a nickname the Blues gave them, the Cane Toads, and New South Welshmen wore the insult of cockroaches as a badge of honour. Now, cane toads and cockroaches, it sounds silly, and it is, but it was like two armies rallying their symbols. Origin fever was so much more than the series. It was mate versus mate, state versus state, but more importantly, was now a way of life. Chapter 3, the 1995 Maroon Miracle. Just when you thought that this rivalry could not get any crazier, 1995 happened. The year of the ultimate underdog Origin fairy tale. Now, this was during the Super League War, which meant many Queensland-style players were banned from Origin selection. The Maroons were forced to field a bunch of fresh faces, and at the time, no names. The Sydney media coining them the Neville Nobodies. And Queensland's coach, the lovable Fatty Vaughton, had never coached at this level. On paper, this was going to be a bloodbath. The Blues were stacked with superstars whilst the Maroons looked like lambs to the slaughter. One Sydney journalist even declared it the worst Queensland team ever, famously before Cherry Evans said it. But Queensland's response was to go out and play with a heart like never before. In the sheds before Game 1, forward Billy Moore felt the nerves and passion boiling over. As the team got ready to run out, he started belting out a primal cry, "Queenslander, Queenslander," over and over again. And then the other players joined in, shouting their state's name at the top of their lungs. It echoed down the tunnel and was caught on camera for the first time. and instantly became legendary. More said later on, it was the rally cry to help your mate do something special. And with that, the Queenslander war cry was born for fans everywhere, symbolizing the never say die spirit, and what followed in the 1995 series defied every prediction, as those no-name Maroons, fueled by passion and pride, swept the series 3-0. They didn't just steal a game, they cleared the Blues with each match, more shocking than the last. These young Queenslanders played out of their skins, tackling like their life depended on it, throwing themselves at the mighty Blues, and ultimately coming out on top. It was as if sheer willpower and unity trumped superstar talent. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, and the press had to quite literally eat their words. One columnist wrote that Vaughton had taken a squad of nobodies and pulled off the greatest Origin heist of them all. The Maroons themselves embraced the joke, saying those Neville nobodies turned into somebodies tonight. In fact, the Queensland team of 95 became folk heroes back home. Decades later, Queensland even designed a special commemorative jersey inspired by those underdogs, celebrating how those nobodies wrote themselves into history as champions. For Rugby League, the 1995 upset was proof that in Origin, the script can always be flipped. It doesn't matter if one side looks weaker on paper, the passion and Origin spirit can elevate players to superhuman heights. And that theme would still echo decades later, but in 1995, it was unprecedented. The series that year wasn't just a sport, it was like a Rocky movie playing out in real life. And OG Queenslanders still talk about 95 with watery eyes. And for New South Wales, it was a bitter pill, but also added to the mythology. Even when you're on top, never underestimate a wounded State of Origin team. Origin had proven again that it was the ultimate theatre of rugby league. Chapter 4, the Dynasty. Now, as a New South Welshman through and through, this era was by far the worst that I had to go through. Probably anybody that was a New South Wales fan has ever had to go through. Through the late 90s and early 2000s, the Origin pendulum swung back and forth. Both states enjoyed periods of victory, and new stars like Joey Johns emerged. But nothing could have prepared fans for the era of Queensland dominance that was about to begin in 2006. This was the Maroons' golden generation, a once-in-a-lifetime collection of players all hitting their prime at the same freaking time. We're talking about names that today are rugby league royalty. Darren Lockyer, Cameron Smith, Jonathan Thurston, Billy Slater, Greg Inglis, Cooper Cronk, and the list goes on. A lineup so good it was unfair. And in 2006, Queensland was staring down the barrel of a fourth straight series loss. But in Game 3 2006 in Brisbane, with Queensland trailing late, about to lose the series, there was an intercept by Lockyer, who raced away to score and win the game. That play not only stole the series, it ignited a dynasty. And from that moment, the Maroons were going to win 8 straight series in a row, an unprecedented reign from 2006 to 2013 that etched those players' names in history. I remember that era at school, and year after year, more kids were just randomly becoming Queenslanders. And by the end of it, there was about 4 of us left in New South Wales that still went for New South Wales. And the 4 of us would still pray night and day that New South Wales could turn it around. But year after year, we watched the Maroons lift the trophy. Some series were close, some were 3-0 sweeps, but the result was always the same. Queensland was on top. It was heartbreak for Blues supporters and pure elation for Queenslanders. The Maroons' dominance was so absolute that phrases like Queensland spirit took on almost mythical status. And one of those greats, Cameron Smith, once joked that if they kept it up, maybe they'd try for 10 in a row. Now, thank that didn't happen. Luckily, they stopped at 8, but by then, the narrative of the rivalry had permanently shifted, and their team was being compared to the all-time great sports dynasties. Whereas New South Wales, desperate to turn the tide, had to regroup and find a generation of heroes. By 2014, most experts expected Queensland to march to a 9th consecutive title, especially with Mal Meninga still being undefeated in series campaigns. New South Wales, meanwhile, hadn't lifted the Origin Shield since 2005. Fans in New South Wales were hopeful, but battle-scarred. 8 years of heartbreak had taught them to brace for the worst, even as a new series began. Still, there was a quiet confidence brewing under new Blues coach Laurie Daly. He had overhauled the team's spine, notably dumping long-term halfback Mitchell Pearce in favor of an untested halves pairing from the Dogs, Trent Hodgkinson and Josh Reynolds. Jared Hayne returned to his preferred fullback role, and Paul Gallen captained the side again. Desperate to finally taste a series victory, the stage was set. Queensland was favoured, but New South Wales was determined to script a different ending to the dynasty chapter. The series opener at Suncorp Stadium was Queensland's fortress. They hadn't lost there in 5 years, but the Blues defied expectations and Queenslanders were dealt a blow early. Cooper Cronk broke his arm, which obviously disrupted the Maroons' attack. New South Wales pounced, with Brett Morris scoring a gutsy try despite injuring his shoulder, and Jared Hayne muscling through to score in signature fashion. A relentless defensive stand in the last few minutes saw New South Wales hold off a late Queensland surge, clinching a gritty 12-8 victory. It was their first Game 1 win in Brisbane since 2003, with Daly himself saying that was one of New South Wales' finest performances. The Blues finally believed, and so did us fans. 3 weeks later, over 83,000 fans packed Sydney's ANZ Stadium for Game 2, a chance for the Blues to secure the series on home soil. New South Wales carried confidence from the Game 1 win, but nothing ever came easy in Origin. This match was an old-fashioned arm wrestle from the start, dominated by hard-hitting tackles and gritty defense, and by halftime, neither team managed to try. Queensland's only points came from 2 Jonathan Thurston penalty goals at the 14th and 30th minute, giving the Maroons a 4-0 lead. Thurston's kicks not only put Queensland ahead, but also vaulted him past Mal Meninga as the all-time leading scorer in Origin history. New South Wales had come agonisingly close to conceding a try just before the break, when Maroons forward Sam Thaiday muscled over the line in the 51st minute, and the Queenslanders began to celebrate, only for the video replay to show Jared Hayne's last-ditch tackle had jarred the ball loose from Thaiday's grip. It was a massive let-off for the Blues, keeping the score at 4-0 and the game within reach, and that resilience set the stage for a grandstand finish. And the defining moment came with less than 10 minutes remaining. After pressing the Maroons' line through multiple sets, the Blues finally saw a crack, and Hodjo seized the opportunity and slipped through a gap to score under the post. And at the 71st minute mark nonetheless, ANZ Stadium erupted in a frenzy as Blues jerseys swamped Hodjo in celebration. He then calmly slotted the conversion to put New South Wales up 6-4, and for the first time all night, the Blues had the lead. The final minutes were as tense as ever, and a call on the ensuing kickoff gave New South Wales an unexpected penalty, with that lucky break allowing the Blues to chew up precious time and keep Queensland pinned away from scoring range. Still, the Maroons threw one last Hail Mary assault at the line, desperate to spoil the party, but there was simply no denying the Blues, tackling themselves to a standstill. New South Wales clung to the 6-4 lead until the glorious sound of the full-time siren. New South Wales had won the game, and with it, the series, clinching their first Origin title since 2005. The stadium exploded into noise and tears, but tears of joy this time, as years of frustration melted away in an instant. Captain Paul Gallen was swamped by teammates embracing in celebration. One of the most courageous efforts I have ever seen, Laurie Daly said later on, noticing how they never gave up despite being on the back foot all night. He knew the victory meant so much more than just a series win, saying, "I am one extremely happy coach, and I am certain a whole state would be happy. This win will probably unite us more than ever before." And indeed it did. Across New South Wales that night, fans erupted in collective relief. The Origin Shield was finally coming back. The New South Wales government even lit up Sydney with a fireworks display on the Harbour Bridge to celebrate the series win, underscoring how significant this moment was for the state. After 8 long years, the Blues had climbed to the mountain and toppled a Queensland dynasty a lot earlier than realistically it should have happened. The back and forth of errors only made Origin somehow more compelling. You had the Queensland dynasty, then New South Wales fighting back with a few series wins, and then Queensland again, and so on and so forth. But fast forwarding to 2020, and the stage was set for another classic underdog tale. Queensland was given virtually no chance. The talent pool seemed dry, and the Maroons fielded a very inexperienced side. The media, perhaps not learning their lesson from '95, blasted the Maroons lineup as the weakest ever. Former Blues captain Paul Gallen dubbed it the worst Queensland team ever. And once again, Origin delivered a jaw-dropping experience. In a 3-game stunner, Queensland pulled off a famous upset, clinching the 2020 series 2-1 and leaving New South Wales in disbelief. That deciding Game 3 saw Queensland, coached by the legendary Wayne Bennett, dig deep into that well of Queensland pride to win 20-14. The Maroons captain that night, Daly Cherry Evans, couldn't resist a cheeky grin as he thanked everyone who wrote them off. It only fueled their fire, as one report put it. Origin thrives because of wins like this, the kind of wins that add to the overall mythology. And in Origin lore, 2020 now sits alongside 1995 and 1980 as proof that this arena breeds miracles when you least expect them. And let's not forget, even when Queensland dominates, every single game is still a ferocious battle. The hits are as hard and the effort as supreme, as even in game 1 as if it were a tied series decider. Now, New South Wales regained momentum with back-to-back series wins in 21 and 22, featuring their own modern stars like Cleary and Turbo. And that 2022 decider was another instant classic. A sold-out crowd in Brisbane, a brutal contest with one of the biggest early game collisions you'll ever see, and a Queensland victory that went down to the wire. It showed that more than 4 decades on, Origin hasn't lost an ounce of its magic, with each generation producing new legends, new stories, and with the intensity still embodying previous heroes. Chapter 5, More Than a Game. Okay, so by now you must be thinking, okay, this is great and it's super duper epic, but why do people care this much? The answer lies beyond the field. In the culture of Queensland and New South Wales, State of Origin taps into a primal sense of identity. In Queensland, Origin Night might as well become a public holiday. Origin became a symbol of Queensland's pride. It's why you'll hear the crowd at Suncorp Stadium, which locals still call Lang Park, erupt in a unison chant of Queenslander when their team needs a boost. As Billy Moore described it, when you play at Lang Park, you do not run onto the field, you float on it. That's how much playing for Queensland and Origin means. It's practically spiritual. In New South Wales, the cultural impact is just as real. Sydney is a huge city with lots of sports, but when Origin hits, it cuts through the noise. The Blues represent the pride of the oldest rugby league state. For New South Wales fans, beating Queensland carries a sense of proving we're the best where it counts. Origin losses hurt, really badly. And Origin wins, if you're in Sydney on a night the Blues clinched the series, you'll hear car horns blaring and fans carrying on in the streets, because it's not just a trophy, it's bragging rights for an entire year. Origin also has a way of uniting people within each state. Remember that the NRL competition is filled with club rivals. Souths versus Roosters, the oldest and the greatest, and up in Queensland you've got the Cowboys and the Broncos. But come Origin time, those same rivals become brothers in arms. A Bunnies and Chooks fan might hate each other the other 9 months of the year, but during Origin, they'll stand shoulder to shoulder in Blues jerseys, high-fiving every chance they get. The tribalism shifts, it becomes state versus state, full stop. Economically and socially, Origin is massive. Big cities like Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and even Perth or Adelaide occasionally host games that inject millions into local business. But more importantly, it's a shared experience. Families host barbecues or viewing parties. It's an annual event marked on the calendar like Christmas or a birthday. Kids grow up dreaming of wearing either the maroon or the blue jersey and becoming the next Wally Lewis or Brad Fittler. It's no coincidence that many players call Origin the pinnacle of their career. Some even rank it above playing for Australia because the intensity and meaning of those games are second to none. As Rugby League immortal Joey Johns once said, "You'll never feel pressure like you do in Origin. It can break you or make you a legend." And let's just touch on the quality real quick. These matches are often regarded as the highest quality rugby league on the planet. The pace is faster, the hits harder, and the skill next level. All-star players from 17 NRL clubs funnel into 2 super teams, effectively all-star squads for each state. And they go at it with extra emotion on top, and the result is the same every time. It is pure magic. That's why even neutral fans will watch. It's simply the best showcase of the greatest game of all. In short, Origin matters because it's personal. It's state pride distilled into a sport. It's the closest thing rugby league has to a holy war, and fans care so much because they feel a part of it. When their state wins, they win. Their community wins. Their identity as a Queenslander or New South Welshman is affirmed. And when their state loses, it genuinely hurts, but also sets up a redemptive arc for next year. The simple truth is, we all want the right to say that my state is better than yours. And finally, Chapter 6. legacy of an unrivaled rivalry. From its scrappy beginnings in 1980 to what it still means today, State of Origin has left an unquestionable mark on rugby league. It rescued the concept of interstate competition and turned it into the sport's biggest spectacle. It gave us heroes and it gave us villains. It gave us unforgettable moments of unbelievable courage and skill. And yes, a couple of black eyes and broken bones along the way. Origin changed rugby league by raising the bar. Players know that to be considered truly great, they have to prove themselves in this arena, and the legacy is evident every year when Origin rolls around. Everything else in rugby league pauses. The entire narrative of the season diverts to who will win this year's Origin. Kids in the backyard practice their chip and chase and dream of diving over for a Maroons or Blues try. Diehards, including my best mate and I, debate who should be picked because Origin selection is like a badge of honor. Those 3 nights a year will be the high point or the low point of the sports calendar. And as long as Queenslanders and New South Welshmen inhabit the earth, you can bet they'll be arguing about forward passes or whether the ref favored one side, or which team from which year was the greatest. It's a saga that continues to captivate, inspire, and yes, unite and divide in the best of ways. It's turned a regional rivalry into a national obsession. It proved that rugby league could deliver drama on par with any sport in the world, and then took it steps further. And for those of you who've never experienced Origin, do yourself a favor and watch it next time it's on. And you too will find yourself at the edge of your seat, heart pounding and picking a side before very quickly realizing why this is the greatest rivalry in Australian sport. Because when the final whistle blows and the bruises fade away, there's only one question that lingers until next year. Are you ready to bleed for your state all over again?